Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Eric Cho, Network Automation Advocate at Network to Code. Today is part two of our Network Automation Excellence Roadmap to Success video series, where we talk about building a strong foundation for your network automation journey. So let's dive into that a little bit. What is network automation and what does it do for your company? We have identified some drivers in areas where most people typically see value in network automation, such as we could lowering our operation expenses, we can improve our security, or we could have greater insights and control over the network. It really comes down to the many different ways we could benefit from network automation. And with that in mind, we want to start thinking about planning. With something as complex as network automation, we will encounter challenges that we want to get in front of before we encounter them so we could navigate them more efficiently. So how are we going to identify these challenges? We'll start with an assessment. And in the assessment, we want to identify where we want to end up with our goals at the end. We want to narrow down on the goals we want to achieve. Network automation is such a broad category that could deliver value in so many different ways. So we want to kind of isolate and zoom in on where we want to make the project about. So we might try to optimize the process, or maybe our company is more concerned with reducing risks. And we want to kind of have an idea of where we want to end up with what the primary driver for the project is, and we'll get some tangible results from that process. In other words, we want to stay pretty focused. And during the assessment process, we want to interview various stakeholders in the discovery process. We want to understand what their goals are, whether that is the management team to understand the goals, or the architect team to understand the possibilities, or the operations team on their thoughts during their day-to-day workflow. Or maybe it's a security team to ensure that we implement the process that's in line with the security practices. Of course, we also want to include the users that we're serving, what they want to achieve, their goals, where they struggle with, where they see the areas for improvement. So those are kind of some of the questions that we want to ask for the stakeholders. Once we complete the assessment, the next step is really to construct a plan. And these are some of the things that we could start doing early on in the process for planning, such as documenting our workflows, developing a network source of truth, and that is where our data exists today and where we store them. Kind of review the upcoming initiatives so we do not put our blinder on and only realize later on that the project does not fit the future initiatives. And when we're trying to determine where the data lives, it might sound easy, but when we're talking about the entire network, maybe no single person or team has the whole picture. So the effort would be to kind of talk to the stakeholders, figure out where the data lives so we could bring it later together. And having an architecture first approach is important because any tools we bring in, we want it to fit in the architecture, and certainly not the other way around. So we want to start with the workflow and close with picking the tools. We want to have an understanding of what our workflows are and what our most important workflow before we start thinking about tools, right? Once we kind of have an idea of where what the tools are, we also want to scope it down a little bit. We want to do a walkthrough of the tools before we decide on which tools to pick. The walkthrough would include the architect, the users, and make sure that tool actually makes sense of what we want to do. Then, of course, understanding the tools with the proper documentation, and make sure that the tool is extensible. Some tools are more extensible than others. So we want to make sure we could kind of string the tools together to accomplish our mission. Now let's talk about some of the challenges or gaps that we might come across in the process. There might be some knowledge gaps. The network engineer team are really good at network engineering, right? But they might not be so good at programming or the automation processes. So we want to start going there and make sure we know where the gaps are and start making progress to address those gaps. Team dynamics are very important. There might be teams that have not worked together before, and now we have to, the teams have to collaborate together to be successful. So we want to figure out how to synchronize the teams to ensure that they could all work effectively together. There might be some data issues, right? Some data today might be in Excel sheets or flat files, and those files do not have APIs that we query. So we would need to make a plan to see how we could, transform them first. Funding is important. We want to make sure we have executive leadership sign on for the projects. Lack of documentation could be an issue as well. We'll want to get in front of that early on. The processes or that could live outside of the minds or inside the minds of the individual, but not documented everywhere or anywhere. So we want to get in front of that. We talk about the importance of getting in front of the future initiatives, of course. For example, I mean, for a Cisco shop, but we plan to onboard a bunch of Juniper devices later on. That is going to be a major factor in, picking our automation tools, right? And then lastly, the integration issues. I mean, let's face it, not all systems play nicely with each other. So we want to figure out which ones are the troublemakers and either, kind of figure out a way to mitigate it or work around it. Here we have the network automation architecture from network to code. There are different pieces to the architecture. We have the the network infrastructure, and those are your routers and switches, servers even. They're either on-prem, virtual, or in the cloud. And then we have the user interfaces, and that is the layer where the user interact with the system, whether the users are requesting data, making some changes to the network, interact with the network, that sort of stuff. And of course, we have the network source of truth, and that is where we define the intended state of the network, whether that is the data center, management tools, the IPAM, your IP management software, and all that information could be in one place. And we also have the automation engine that implements the tasks, the orchestration system that ties all the automation pieces and steps together to accomplish the objective. Also, we have the the telemetry and analytics to monitor and observe the system to verify the actual state of our network that feeds back into your network source of truth. And here we have the prioritizing workflows, which is super crucial in the process, right? A lot of times when we start on our network automation journey, we're kind of lost on which workflow to tackle first, right? It's very easy to pick a suboptimal workflow to begin with, and we recommend to start with a workflow that's low in complexity and high in value, which makes sense, right? I mean, these tasks will allow the team to have wins and start learning the DevOps practices simultaneously. And as the team gets better at net DevOps, the systems are more automated. We could move on to to the more quick wins that are listed in the low complexity and low value quadrant that you see on the screen here. These are kind of the low hanging fruits. They may not offer a lot of of value, but you will get us those wins, and then these wins will build the confidence for us to move on to workflows that are high in complexity, but also high in value. And these are the workflows that are that might be difficult from a programming perspective, but offer a lot of value. So these are worthwhile workflows to tackle. And we also want to keep in mind that there are some tasks that are simply just not worth the time. They are extremely difficult to program and does not offer a lot of value. So perhaps for these workflows, we just identify them as such and keep them manual and just kind of avoid them for our automation processes completely. And also, want to give you a word of caution when we first start to do our network automation assessment. We come from a place where we're new to the process, right? So we might not have a lot. So we may not have a lot of success. We might have some misses. And what we would recommend is to have some people on the team who have some experience in network automation to assist with the process. Of course, Network to Code offers a strategic architecture design assessment that combines our experience of working with many different companies across different industries. We call that the setup process, where we, analyze the workflow for you, develop a plan of action that will get you to where you want to be, and that will include the tools and techniques that will facilitate that. And of course, that goes across the people. So the team could be doing, so what the teams could be doing to be more successful in the areas of growth for the team, or it also includes the process where we identify the tools involved in each of the processes and the technology, as we kind of mentioned in the architecture slide, that we will need to be successful. So the full plan is here. We start with the assessment in place and start planning the journey, and then actualize that plan and start to improve upon that plan continuously. And once we, start to do those three things, we'll be able to accomplish the outcome that we listed on the right here. In summary, the topics we have covered today, we talked about network automation, the assessment that we'll perform, and our planning for our successful accomplishment of that project, and then what we do with that plan once it is in place. I want to thank you for your time. Again, we cannot stress enough the importance of building a strong foundation for your network automation journey. We hope this video was useful to you. Please feel free to reach out to us with any questions. Best of luck to you for your network automation journey, and thank you for joining.